Do you recognize it, Governor? This is the Silver Star. For extraordinary gallantry in the face of danger, right?
Impossible! This can't be happening!
They arrested her for faking SEAL service until the judge whispered, "That Silver Star is real." Your Honor, this defendant falsely claims Navy SEAL service and wears stolen valor decorations. Prosecutor David Chen announced as Winwin Merik stood in handcuffs. Judge Patricia Williams squinted at the Silver Star on Merik's chest. She'd seen that exact award in classified Pentagon briefings. Former operator Winwin Merik, 32, faced 5 years for stolen valor after her classified SEAL service was erased from official records. The Silver Star she'd earned through combat operations that officially never existed was now evidence against her. Judge Williams, former Navy JAG with top-secret clearance, recognized decorations that shouldn't exist publicly. Her secure call to Pentagon classification review would either destroy Merik or expose the military's most protected secret program. Operator Winwin Merik had served 6 years in Project Selkie, the Navy's most classified program training female operators for deep cover special operations missions, requiring gender-specific infiltration capabilities that conventional SEAL teams couldn't accomplish without compromising operational security. Her Silver Star was earned during classified counter-terrorism operation in Yemen, where she'd eliminated high-value terrorist targets while maintaining cover as humanitarian aid worker, preventing attacks against American civilian infrastructure that would have killed hundreds of innocent Americans. The program's existence was compartmentalized at presidential daily briefing levels, with only 12 women selected from thousands of applicants for training, exceeding conventional SEAL standards while specializing in operations where female operators provided tactical advantages that male personnel couldn't achieve. Project Selkie was terminated after congressional budget cuts, with all service records classified or destroyed to protect operational security, leaving participants without official documentation of their elite military service or eligibility for veteran benefits despite sacrifice equal to any special operations personnel. Winwin's transition to civilian life had been catastrophic. No official service record meant no veteran benefits, no federal employment preferences, and no recognition of military service that had required extraordinary sacrifice protecting American national security through classified operations. District Attorney David Chen had built his political career prosecuting stolen valor cases that generated media attention and public support for his tough-on-crime reputation, particularly targeting individuals whose military claims couldn't be verified through conventional record systems. His personal animosity toward military personnel stemmed from his own rejection during Navy officer candidate school, creating psychological need to diminish veteran achievements while advancing his civilian career through prosecuting those who'd succeeded where he'd failed. Chen specialized in cases where defendants lacked adequate legal representation or resources to challenge prosecutorial misconduct, making Winwin's apparent lack of official military documentation perfect for generating conviction statistics that advanced his political ambitions without considering the possibility of classified service requiring special handling. Judge Patricia Williams had served 15 years as Navy Judge Advocate General Officer with top-secret security clearance, including assignment to classified legal matters involving special operations personnel, whose service records required compartmentalized handling that civilian courts normally never encountered or had authority to evaluate properly. The charges against Winwin included wearing unauthorized military decorations, falsely claiming military service and fraud through veteran benefit applications that prosecutors claimed were based on fabricated military records that couldn't be verified through Defense Department personnel systems. Your Honor, Defendant Merik has worn Navy SEAL Trident insignia and Silver Star decoration while claiming combat service that no official records support. Chen announced his presentation designed to generate media attention and public outrage against apparent stolen valor violation. Winwin stood silently in civilian clothes, her operational security training preventing her from discussing classified service that couldn't be acknowledged without compromising national security operations, still requiring compartmentalized protection through ongoing classification protocols. Furthermore, Your Honor, defendant has applied for veteran disability benefits, claiming PTSD from combat operations that Navy personnel records indicate never occurred, constituting fraud against federal Veteran Affairs programs. Chen continued, the media coverage portrayed Winwin as typical stolen valor offender, whose fabricated military claims insulted legitimate veterans while exploiting public respect for military service through deceptive behavior that warranted enhanced criminal penalties. Judge Williams observed inconsistencies in prosecutorial presentation, while noting that Winwin's military bearing suggested actual service, despite lack of conventional documentation that civilian prosecutors expected for military service verification. Your Honor, extensive investigation has revealed no record of defendants' claimed military service with Navy SEAL units or any special operations assignment that would justify wearing combat decorations. Chen testified unaware that absence of records might indicate classification rather than fabrication. Physical evidence included photographs of Winwin wearing military decorations at veteran events, witness testimony about her claims of combat service, and federal benefit applications requesting compensation for service-connected disabilities that couldn't be verified through conventional military personnel records. Additionally, Your Honor, defendant's detailed knowledge of SEAL training and operations appears derived from publicly available sources rather than actual military experience. Chen argued his civilian background preventing recognition that Winwin's operational knowledge exceeded anything available through public information. Judge Williams recognized that prosecutorial presentation contained assumptions about military record-keeping that might not apply to classified programs requiring special documentation procedures that civilian prosecutors wouldn't understand without appropriate security clearances. Winwin's public defender, lacking military knowledge and security clearance, could only offer weak objections to prosecutorial narrative that characterized her as fraud, rather than investigating possibility of legitimate classified service requiring federal verification through appropriate channels. Winwin maintained operational discipline despite facing criminal prosecution for service that had required extraordinary sacrifice protecting American national security through missions that civilian populations would never be authorized to understand or acknowledge publicly. Your Honor, I cannot discuss specific details of my military service without appropriate security clearances and congressional authorization that this civilian court lacks authority to provide. Winwin testified her response, suggesting legitimate classification concerns rather than evasive criminal behavior. Chen interpreted her refusal to discuss service details as evidence of fabrication, rather than recognizing operational security requirements that classified personnel maintained even under criminal prosecution, threatening their civilian lives and personal freedom. Defendants' evasive responses and refusal to provide specific service information demonstrates consciousness of guilt, consistent with stolen valor prosecution requiring enhanced criminal penalties. Chen argued his ignorance about classified service creating prosecutorial misconduct through mischaracterization of legitimate security protocols. Judge Williams recognized coded language suggesting federal classification while understanding that her own security clearance might be necessary for properly evaluating Winwin's claims about military service that appeared to involve national security considerations requiring specialized judicial handling rather than conventional criminal prosecution. Judge Williams activated federal protocols during court recess. Her secure communication with Pentagon classification review, indicating that Winwin's case involved national security considerations, requiring immediate federal intervention and possible dismissal of charges based on classified service records. Colonel Martinez, this is Judge Williams requesting emergency classification review for defendant claiming Navy SEAL service with decorations that appear legitimate but lack conventional documentation, Williams explained through encrypted Pentagon liaison channels. The federal response was immediate and comprehensive. Department of Defense classification officers, Congressional Intelligence Committee liaisons, and Navy Special Operations Command personnel whose combined authority could either validate or debunk Winwin service claims through classified record verification. Additionally, Colonel Martinez defendants' operational security responses and military bearing suggest legitimate classified service rather than stolen valor fabrication that prosecution alleges without investigating federal classification possibilities. Williams continued, Pentagon coordination included immediate security clearance verification for judicial personnel, while establishing protocols for handling criminal prosecution of classified military personnel whose service records required congressional authorization to acknowledge or discuss in civilian court proceedings. Judge Williams' preliminary review indicates defendant Merik's service involves presidential daily briefing-level classification requiring immediate federal oversight and possible case dismissal pending security review. Colonel Martinez responded, federal intervention would transform routine stolen valor prosecution into national security matter, requiring constitutional protection for classified personnel whose service deserved recognition despite compartmentalization requirements preventing public acknowledgement. Defense Department classification review revealed Project Selkie's existence and Winwin's legitimate service record, including Silver Star, earned through classified counterterrorism operation that had prevented terrorist attacks against American civilian targets through deep cover infiltration requiring female operator capabilities. Judge Williams' defendant Merik served with distinction in classified Navy Special Operations Program, requiring security clearance to discuss with combat decorations earned through operations that officially cannot be acknowledged without congressional authorization, explained Navy Special Operations Command Representative Captain Patricia Santos. The revelation that Project Selkie had been illegally terminated with service records destroyed or classified created federal investigation into institutional abandonment of classified personnel whose service deserved recognition and veteran benefits despite compartmentalization's requirements. Furthermore, Judge Williams' operator Merik and 11 other female SEAL qualified personnel were abandoned by institutional failures that denied them official recognition, veteran benefits, and service record documentation after program termination. Santos continued. Congressional oversight would investigate systematic discrimination against classified female operators whose service had exceeded conventional SEAL standards while conducting missions that male personnel couldn't accomplish due to operational security requirements demanding gender-specific infiltration capabilities. Federal evidence included classified mission records, combat decoration citations, and testimony from Special Operations commanders whose authority established Winwin's legitimate military service and heroic combat record that civilian prosecutors had criminalized through ignorance and institutional bias against classified personnel. Word spread through classified special operations networks as news of Winwin's prosecution reached active duty and retired personnel who'd served with Project Selkie participants, or knew about classified female operator programs requiring protection from civilian legal persecution. Admiral Michael Rodriguez, former Project Selkie commander, activated emergency protocols protecting classified personnel from civilian prosecution while advocating for federal recognition of service that had been systematically erased through institutional failures and congressional budget cuts. Operator Merik represents extraordinary courage and sacrifice through classified operations that saved American lives while conducting missions requiring capabilities that conventional SEAL teams couldn't provide due to operational limitations. Rodriguez testified during classified congressional briefing. The military response included coordination with veteran advocacy organizations while establishing legal defense funds for Project Selkie participants whose service had been criminalized through civilian ignorance and institutional abandonment, requiring federal intervention and congressional oversight. Additionally, Operator Merik's prosecution demonstrates systematic institutional failure, affecting all Project Selkie personnel whose service records were illegally classified or destroyed, denying them veteran benefits and recognition earned through combat operations exceeding conventional special operations standards. Rodriguez continued, federal coordination would ensure immediate dismissal of criminal charges while establishing precedent for protecting classified personnel from civilian prosecution based on service record documentation that national security protocols prevented acknowledging through conventional military personnel systems requiring congressional authorization for disclosure. Pentagon classification review conducted in secure facility revealed comprehensive evidence of Winwin's legitimate Navy Special Operations Service, including mission reports, combat decoration citations, and commanding officer testimonials that established her heroic service record through classified operations requiring presidential authorization to acknowledge. Judge Williams' comprehensive review confirms Operator Merik's Silver Star was earned through classified counterterrorism operation in Yemen, where she eliminated 5 high-value targets while maintaining humanitarian aid worker cover identity, announced Defense Security Service Director Colonel Patricia Chen. The classified evidence included video footage of Winwin's combat operations, intercepted terrorist communications proving mission success, and presidential daily briefing summaries documenting how her actions had prevented mass casualty attacks against American civilian infrastructure. Furthermore, Judge Williams' Operator Merik service record includes 18 classified missions across 7 countries, with combat effectiveness exceeding conventional SEAL parameters while conducting operations that male personnel couldn't accomplish due to gender-specific operational requirements. Colonel Chen continued, federal evidence validation included polygraph examination, psychological evaluation, and medical documentation of service-connected disabilities that corroborated Winwin's combat service claims while establishing her eligibility for veteran benefits that institutional failures had systematically denied. Additionally, Judge Williams' Project Selkie participants underwent training exceeding conventional SEAL standards with selection criteria, physical requirements, and operational qualifications surpassing established special operations benchmarks, Chen declared. The comprehensive federal review transformed stolen valor prosecution into constitutional violation against decorated combat veteran whose service had been erased through institutional discrimination and congressional budget decisions that abandoned classified personnel without appropriate transition support or recognition. House and Senate Intelligence Committees conducted emergency hearings addressing systematic discrimination against Project Selkie participants whose service had been illegally erased while their combat records were classified beyond civilian court authority to evaluate properly. Operator Merik's prosecution represents institutional failure where classified service became criminal liability due to congressional and Pentagon mismanagement of Special Operations personnel transition following program termination, announced House Intelligence Committee Chairman Robert Torres. Congressional investigation revealed that 12 Project Selkie operators had been abandoned without official service records, veteran benefits, or recognition, despite combat service exceeding conventional special operations standards while conducting missions that prevented terrorist attacks against American civilian targets. Furthermore, Pentagon institutional failures resulted in systematic discrimination against female special operations personnel whose classified service deserved recognition rather than criminalization through civilian legal system lacking authority to evaluate their legitimate military records. Torres continued, federal legislation would result from congressional oversight, establishing specialized courts for cases involving classified military personnel while creating rapid response protocols, ensuring federal intervention when national security considerations affected civilian criminal prosecution. Additionally, all Project Selkie participants will receive immediate restoration of service records, retroactive veteran benefits, and federal recognition for combat service that institutional failures had systematically erased through inappropriate classification and congressional budget decisions, Torres declared. Institutional accountability included Pentagon policy reform, ensuring classified personnel received appropriate civilian transition support while establishing congressional oversight, preventing similar abandonment of special operations personnel whose service deserved recognition despite compartmentalization requirements affecting public acknowledgement. Judge Williams dismissed all charges against Winwin with prejudice while ordering federal investigation into prosecutorial misconduct that had criminalized legitimate military service through ignorance and institutional bias against classified personnel requiring constitutional protection. Operator Merik, This court apologizes for judicial proceedings that criminalized your heroic military service, while your sacrifice protected American civilians through classified operations that prevented terrorist attacks, requiring extraordinary courage and operational competence, Williams announced. Federal recognition included immediate restoration of Winwin's complete service record, retroactive veteran benefits covering 6 years of institutional abandonment, and congressional recognition for combat service that had exceeded conventional special operations standards. Additionally, Operator Merik, your prosecution demonstrates systematic institutional failures requiring federal oversight and congressional legislation protecting classified personnel from civilian legal persecution based on service records that national security protocols prevent acknowledging through conventional military documentation. Williams continued, the case dismissal established legal precedent protecting classified military personnel from civilian prosecution while creating federal protocols, ensuring immediate intervention when national security considerations affected criminal proceedings involving legitimate military service, requiring congressional authorization to acknowledge publicly. Winwin's vindication would inspire comprehensive military justice reform, protecting classified personnel while establishing institutional accountability, ensuring special operations veterans received appropriate recognition despite compartmentalization requirements that protected ongoing national security operations from public disclosure. Winwin Merik's federal recognition included restoration of complete Project Selkie service record, retroactive promotion to Chief Petty Officer, and congressional presentation of additional combat decorations that had been classified since her Yemen operations prevented multiple terrorist attacks against American targets. The Navy established permanent memorial honoring Project Selkie participants whose classified service had exceeded conventional SEAL standards while conducting operations that officially never occurred but had saved American lives through extraordinary courage and operational excellence, requiring gender-specific capabilities. Pentagon recognition included Winwin's appointment as advisor for classified personnel transition programs, ensuring other special operations veterans wouldn't face similar abandonment when compartmentalization requirements conflicted with veteran benefit eligibility or service record documentation. Federal compensation covered 6 years of denied veteran benefits while providing specialized medical care for service-connected disabilities that conventional VA programs couldn't address without understanding her classified combat service, requiring presidential authorization to acknowledge publicly. The courthouse, where she faced criminal prosecution, became federal training center for civilian authorities handling cases involving classified military personnel, whose service required constitutional protection rather than criminal persecution. Congressional testimony established Winwin as expert witness on classified military operations and institutional failures, affecting special operations personnel whose service deserved recognition despite compartmentalization requirements preventing conventional military record documentation. The Merik Act created federal legislation protecting classified military personnel from civilian prosecution while establishing specialized courts with appropriate security clearances for handling cases involving national security considerations affecting legitimate military service. Project Selkie was officially acknowledged through congressional resolution honoring 12 female operators whose classified service had prevented terrorist attacks while conducting missions that conventional special operations couldn't accomplish due to operational limitations requiring gender-specific infiltration capabilities. National recognition included Winwin's foundation providing legal assistance to classified military personnel facing civilian challenges while advocating for veteran benefits and service record restoration when compartmentalization requirements conflicted with constitutional rights. Her story inspired comprehensive Pentagon reform, ensuring classified personnel received appropriate civilian transition support while maintaining operational security, protecting ongoing national security missions, requiring continued compartmentalization and congressional oversight. Winwin's transformation from criminal defendant to federal advocate demonstrated how institutional failures could criminalize legitimate military service while inspiring comprehensive reform, protecting classified personnel from systematic discrimination and civilian legal persecution. The Special Operations Community established permanent liaison, ensuring classified personnel received appropriate recognition while maintaining operational security requirements, protecting ongoing missions from public disclosure that could compromise national security operations. Judge Williams created veteran court protocols, ensuring military service records were properly evaluated before criminal prosecution while establishing federal coordination, preventing civilian legal persecution of classified personnel whose service deserved constitutional protection. Winwin continues federal service protecting classified military personnel, while her case established permanent precedent, ensuring special operations veterans received appropriate recognition despite compartmentalization requirements affecting public acknowledgement of their heroic service protecting American national security through extraordinary sacrifice and operational excellence. The Merik Protocol revolutionized federal handling of classified military personnel through specialized courts, congressional oversight, and Pentagon transition programs, ensuring special operations veterans received appropriate recognition despite compartmentalization requirements, preventing conventional service record documentation. Winwin addressed military justice conferences monthly, her Project Selkie background providing credibility that influenced comprehensive reform, protecting classified personnel from civilian legal persecution while maintaining operational security requirements, protecting ongoing national security missions. The Department of Defense created classified personnel advocacy positions, ensuring rapid federal intervention when compartmentalization requirements conflicted with veteran benefits or civilian legal proceedings affecting legitimate military service, requiring congressional authorization to acknowledge publicly. Federal legislation enhanced penalties for prosecuting classified military personnel while establishing compensation programs for special operations veterans whose service had been systematically erased through institutional failures and congressional budget decisions requiring immediate correction and institutional accountability. Winwin Merik discovered that her classified military service, once criminalized through institutional failures, became foundation for protecting other special operations personnel from systematic discrimination while ensuring appropriate recognition for compartmentalized service requiring federal oversight and congressional protection. Her advocacy work helped establish specialized veteran programs addressing classified service challenges while maintaining operational security, protecting ongoing national security missions requiring continued compartmentalization and congressional authorization for public acknowledgement. The courtroom, where prosecutors criminalized her service, became symbol of military justice reform, proving that federal authority could protect classified personnel while maintaining national security requirements that protected ongoing special operations from public disclosure. The courthouse incident proved that classified military service deserved federal protection equal to conventional military recognition, while demonstrating how institutional accountability could prevent civilian persecution of special operations personnel whose heroic service required compartmentalization for national security reasons. Winwin learned that surviving institutional abandonment created responsibility for protecting other classified veterans from systematic discrimination. Honor earned through classified service remains valid regardless of institutional failures. When federal justice activates for abandoned veterans, no classification level can withstand constitutional protection that ensures military sacrifice receives appropriate recognition despite compartmentalization requirements. In the end, Winwin Merik learned that her Silver Star represented more than individual heroism. It symbolized every classified warrior whose service protected America from shadows where recognition was impossible, but sacrifice was absolute. Her vindication proved that true honor cannot be classified, only temporarily hidden.